It's the Full Court Press with Eric Franson and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Throws, answer, yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker with you here. It's just going to be me today. It's actually just going to be me for pretty much the entire week. Eric Franson off on vacation. Unfortunate week for him to be doing this because there's a lot of stuff expecting to come down the line over the next week. Not reporting anything, just that's my expectation. I kind of said this at the end of last week. I was expecting there to be quite a bit of, news coming out. Obviously, transfer portal, and what I specifically mentioned was, new head coach. Was kind of hoping to know who the new head coach was going to be today, but that was more of a hope, not an expectation. Just want to know sooner rather than later. I'm just a curious person. A lot to get to today. Now, on the note of programming, this is going to be a shortened show. We have the Men's National Championship going on tonight. Pregame is going to start at 5:30, so we're going to hand it over to them then. I'll get off the air about 5:27, so we'll lose half of the second hour. But there'll still be plenty of time to go over all the news that's kind of been happening over the weekend, the news that broke earlier today. We had some transfer portal news from Utah State players, and the Twitter rumor mill is putting out smoke. It's emitting smoke regarding who the next Utah State men's basketball head coach could be. It's one of the names that we've all been looking at, all been thinking. It was the first name on the list I put on my article on CashValleyDaily.com of potential head coaches. And I was not the first to report that name, but, it was one of the obvious names, and it's my favorite name. The one that I've been hoping Utah State would end up grabbing. There's obviously a lot of other news. As I said, the Utah State transfers. San Diego State, they're playing the national tournament, the national title. We've talked about how that could impact Utah State. The women's NCAA champion was crowned last night. LSU getting the title. A bit of controversy around that, but overall a very good showing for women's basketball, where they set a record for viewership on a specific network. It was ESPN Plus. Also, we've got Utah Jazz news. We may end up pushing this later into the week because we have a bit of a short show today, and obviously there's some time to talk about some of this news tomorrow and the coming days. The Jazz are nearing elimination from getting into the playoffs. They are still eligible, but the likelihood is growing smaller and smaller by the day and by the game. Not helping the fact is that they're losing one of their players, likely for the season, entering concussion protocol. So a lot of things going on today and this week. If y'all want to join the show, you can text in 435-339-0321. We've also got the phone line, 435-752-1069. Though if you call in, I would ask that you call in during a break because my ability to answer the phone during a segment is basically zero. I can't get off the air and talk to somebody on the phone for 30 seconds and leave dead air. Or more accurately, you can faintly hear me talking on the phone in the background. We don't need that. But you're always welcome to text in. We did have this Text come in 9315, reliable as ever. Says, saw this on a full court press host family's post. So a family member of either me or Eric. What insider information did you give them? And it's a picture that just says, but first, sprinkles. I have not given out any insider information because I'll be upfront. I don't have any insider information. I've not sought that out. I have suspicions and I've heard rumors and whatnot. I don't know if it was a family member of Eric. He's more likely to have insider information. But just say right now, Danny Sprinkle is the name that does appear on the forefront. That's the smoke is all around Danny Sprinkle, the current Montana State head coach. He's led the Montana State Bobcats to back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances on the strength of back-to-back conference tournament championships in the Big Sky. And Danny Sprinkle will certainly have some ties to Utah State. We're more just to Utah. Obviously, he plays Weber State. A bit of a West Coast guy. His alma mater is Montana State. He was a player there, graduated in 2000. Was a pretty good player for them. Set some three-point shooting records for them. I think career and single season, either three-pointers, made, attempts, whatnot. But yeah, he would have brushed up against Weber State. He actually has, Danny Sprinkle has a player on his roster right now who's actually the son of a former Aggie. There's a bunch of weird small connections between Utah State and Montana State at the moment. Some really weird, some of them are even more crazy than that. You know, having the son of a former Aggie on his team, there's an even crazier potential connection there. But I'll only go into that if a lot of that ends up coming through and if certain players wind up transferring, because that's where some of the connections lie. 9315 saying, wasn't Stu on staff at Montana State? I think so. I always forget where Stu was coaching before he was at Utah State. I knew it was like Montana the state. I can't remember if it was Montana State specific. Okay, so it's actually, okay, I was just Googling it. Yeah, it was Montana, not Montana State. But, you know, bit of a connection there. So, it wasn't Montana State specifically. He would have been the head coach a little before Danny Sprinkle himself was at Montana State. Morrill was a head coach at Montana until 1991. Sprinkle would have joined Montana State somewhere around 95, 96, I think. So maybe would have known as Stu Morrill. Like I said, there's enough connections, West Coast and some other things. Danny Sprinkle's going to know Utah State. He's going to be very familiar with them. He's actually familiar with them because he's actually been to the Spectrum. Something I think I mentioned on the show last week, but Danny Sprinkle's first ever head coaching game, his head coaching debut, was at the Spectrum, unless they played an exhibition game. But his first official game as a head coach was at Utah State. That was the game that Utah State, I think, ended up winning 81-73 or 83-71. I'd have to double check. I think it was 81-73. Harold Frey had a pretty good game. Might be taking a line. I think he had 35 points or something like that. To where he gave, at the time, the 17th ranked Aggies quite a scare. That was Craig Smith's second year at Utah State, and there's a lot of hype around that Utah State team, and Danny Sprinkle made the Aggie fans sweat quite a bit for that game. But it was an entertaining game, and I was there. I think I was covering it for the Spectrum, the Statesman, the Utah Statesman. So plenty of connections there for Danny Sprinkle. There's also the fact that Utah State can quintuple his salary. He's making I think $175,000-ish a year. Pretty nice salary. And you look at Odom was getting paid $800,000. Utah State may give a raise. Maybe it's close to $1 million, or maybe $950,000. I don't know if it's exactly 5 times, but it's quite a bit. even though Sprinkle is the alma mater of Montana State, and that would make you think he's willing to stay there longer. Fact of the matter is that money will talk, ambitions will talk, and that's the kind of thing that get him to Utah State. Now, there's nothing official. In fact, Utah State seems to be trying to counter the rumors. Because there were a couple of people, I don't know if you want to call them randos on Twitter. I wouldn't say they're randos because, well, one of them is a rando. One of them is a respected member of the Utah State, kind of sports fandom, especially on Twitter. He's been around. He's tried to make reports like this before. So there's two people that are basically saying Danny Sprinkle to Utah State is a done deal. Scott Gerard for KSL, he's kind of the mouthpiece right now he's been a mouthpiece for Utah State at times. Basically said that no, nothing's imminent. There's no offers, no nothing. So, and that's Utah State countering the rumors. That's not Scott Gerard coming out and just saying that on his own. He's basically likely told by Utah State, hey, we need to counter these rumors for some reason. I don't know why Utah State would want to counter these rumors from randos on Twitter. Again, that's kind of insulting to some people because not all of them are randos. But the fact is there's a lot of smoke. Now, the one thing to learn is that in the sports world, there's the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. That is not the case in sports, sports reporting. Where there is smoke, there could just be smoke. And so that's why I would not report Danny Sprinkle coming to Utah State. Even though there's, part of me wants there to be confirmation bias. Danny Sprinkle is the guy I would say would be best for Utah State. That would be my top choice. But I can't just use confirmation bias. Okay, it's these people on Twitter reporting it, therefore it must be true. You can't just go ahead and go full steam ahead and say it's a guaranteed deal. But I know a lot of fans would like it to be true. I'd like it to be true. I think Danny Sprinkle would be great at Utah State. But it's something that you can't say for certain now. There's some smoke, maybe there's fire, but there are people who are willing to just go out there and say things. They just go out and say things, or maybe they hear a rumor and they report it as fact. When in reality, it was someone may have told them, like, look, this is probably going to happen. And then maybe things change. People change their minds. Circumstances change. And so they'll report something as fact before it comes fact. Now, whoever Utah State's next head coach is going to be fact before it gets announced by Utah State. It'll leak somewhere. But usually you got to wait to confirm things until somebody credible reports it. And there are credible people in the Utah State community who report things and they're accurate. And when they report them, they know that it's going to be true. And we haven't seen that yet from anyone in the Utah State sports media. So I would hold off on saying Danny Sprinkle, even with all of this smoke. You can't say anything yet. We can't be sure. 7911 texting in says sprinkles and ice cream equals winner. Yeah, just Danny Sprinkle and Aggie ice cream. If Danny Sprinkle did come here, there would immediately have to be like a Danny Sprinkle flavor in Aggie ice cream. Like that would 1000% have to happen like immediately. There's no way you couldn't do that. Maybe the only reason you hesitate is because some of those flavors are iconic, but not all of them are iconic. You have the Aggie Bull Tracks, and there's a couple others that. But you gotta go. You'd have to go with the Danny Sprinkle. Maybe have it be discounted on game days. I don't know. That would be interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of memes going on, a lot of GIFs and memes and whatnot going around. People do want Danny Sprinkle, and there's good reason for why people would want Danny Sprinkle. His success the last few years at Montana State. The Bobcats hadn't made the NCAA tournament since 1996 when Sprinkle came on in, what would that have been, like 2018 or 2019? When he took over, the Bobcats hadn't been to the tournament in, 20-plus years? A little over 20 years? Haven't even been to the tournament. Utah State's been to the tournament. They haven't won it in, 20 years. Won a game in, 20 years. Montana State hadn't even been there in more than 20 years. And they went in back-to-back years these last 2 seasons. There were 14 seed bowl times. They did lose both times. They have not won a tournament game. I don't know if they've ever won a tournament game. I didn't look that up, but it'd been a long time since they'd even been to the tournament, and Sprinkle took them there twice. And so we'll see how that goes. We'll see if he ends up at Utah State. The thing is, even if Danny Sprinkle isn't the coach, there are a lot of really good options beside that. When I put up my article with potential head coaches, there are really 4 coaches that I would put on the short list that I feel like could be good hires. Danny Sprinkle is my number 1 choice. But I also had Stan Johnson. He has even more local connections. He grew up in Utah, went to high school in Utah, played college ball in Utah. He's at LMU and has done things kind of similar to another name on the list is Tim Miles, where Stan Johnson and Tim Miles have taken over for programs that have struggled a bit in recent years before they arrived there. San Jose State obviously struggled a lot more than LMU did. San Jose State was basically a welcome mat, a punching bag in the Mountain West. LMU wasn't quite that, but they were like a mid-level team in the WCC, and there are people who can only name 2 or 3 teams in the WCC, the good ones. They can name Gonzaga and St. Mary's and like maybe San Francisco. They've done well, but Loyola Marymount's now one of them. They've done better the last few years. The worst is they might confuse Loyola Marymount with like Loyola of Chicago. But those are 2 guys who, Stan Johnson hasn't been as popular of a name. Tim Miles has been much more popular because Aggie fans saw what he did at San Jose State. They've been watching San Jose State just be this punching bag of the Mountain West for a decade, basically. And then they see, oh, wait, this coach turned San Jose State into a team that won its first ever conference tournament game in the Mountain West and won its first conference tournament game in like a decade and a half. And so he's a popular choice. He's a familiar face. People are familiar with his work because they were able to witness it firsthand. San Jose State beat Utah State. And unlike the last time San Jose State beat Utah State, it didn't get the coach fired. Because at one point, losing to San Jose State basically got Tim Duryea fired. That's a simplistic way to put it, but it certainly helped. When Ryan Odom lost to San Jose State, people didn't really bat an eye. It's like, yeah, you lost because San Jose State's good. They had the coach of the year, player of the year. Fair enough, you lost to him on the road. So it really goes to show how much Tim Miles turned that team around. And obviously another name on that list, kind of the 4th name on what I would say my short list is Nate Dixon. And Dixon's been campaigning hard. He's wanted to have that job. He's trying to sell everyone on, look, I want to stay in Logan. I want to stay in Logan. No, he's really sold that to people in the athletic department, to people around the Aggie community, that he wants to be an Aggie. Now, I don't know how much of that is sincere. It's sincere that he wants to be in Logan to be the head coach. He stayed behind. Ryan Odom went to VCU. Nate Dixon could have followed him there. Nate Dixon followed Ryan Odom. He was there at the spot before. It was the spot before UMBC. Followed him to UMBC and then followed him to Utah State. So he's followed him across a couple of coaching positions. Nate Dixon wants to be a head coach, and by all accounts that I can figure out, Nate Dixon would make a fine head coach. He's been a well-respected assistant, and he's been a decent recruiter. But it is a bit of an unknown because you're not sure, how good can he be? We don't know. You can consider it a negative in some ways. You can't say he's a bad head coach because we don't know, but we don't know he'd be a good head coach because we have no history. It's kind of why I've gravitated more to Stan Johnson and more to Danny Sprinkle. There's more comfort in knowing, okay, this guy has been a good coach. It's like with Eric Peterson. He was a candidate. Now he's gone to South Dakota, and in his first year, he kind of had a bit of a bad year. Now, I would tend not to judge any coach by their first year, but still. He went like 11-19, Eric Peterson did, even though he used to be a candidate for the Utah State job. Another text coming in, 8968. Going off the idea of, potentially Utah State, if Danny Sprinkle came, got to have something with Aggie ice cream. 8968 says, give Sprinkles away on the days Aggies score 100 points for a game. That would probably not happen very often. Surprisingly enough, I haven't looked into too many specifics on Danny Sprinkle's style. He seems to just kind of be an all-around because his defenses haven't been like elite in terms of points allowed. I think last year Montana State were like 74th in points allowed, and then they were like 120-something in points for, which, mind you, points for and points against, I tend to lean more towards offensive and defensive rating, but I didn't look that up. But it just seemed like Montana State was good on offense and good on defense, which doesn't really lend itself to scoring 100 points. Unless it's, playing against a non-Division I team. So, like, maybe once a year, give away Sprinkles. I think maybe you can, like, discount a certain type of ice cream game day or after a win or something like that. There's some really good marketing possibilities there. Or I'm sure Crumble, since they're sponsoring the Aggies, I'm sure they could have, like, a sprinkle cookie or something. There's a lot of different possibilities. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. If you want to keep chiming in on a potential new head coach, Danny Sprinkle seems to be the name that's going around. There's a lot of smoke around him potentially coming to Utah State. Some saying it's a done deal. Others saying definitely not a done deal yet. But if you want to text in, 435-339-0321. We come back, we'll go into a little bit more on the transfers. News from today. Hard news about 3 Utah State players deciding to enter the transfer portal. What it means for the Aggies, we'll talk about that next.
Imagine your wedding day. Elegant, simple, yet stunning, stress-free. It's your day. It's all about you. Whether you're looking for small and simple or have a grander idea, the Riverwoods Conference Center will accommodate your every need. Choose the inside ballroom elegance or outside along the natural decor of the beautiful Logan River. A Riverwoods event planner will work personally with you to make sure your event is exactly how you've envisioned it. The Riverwoods Conference Center, where your happily ever after begins. Google Riverwoods Conference Center or call 750-5151.
Les Olson IT structured cabling is second to none. Tired of old and inefficient cabling? Have an upgrade or remodel planned? Building a new network from the ground up? We offer the very best in low voltage cabling installation, including data, phone, fiber optic, and more. Ask us how to get your free consultation today.
Les Olson IT.
As a small business, achieving your financial goals and ambitions can be a steep and rocky mountain to climb. This is Brett Green, president of Cache Valley Bank. To conquer this mountain and achieve your goals, it takes planning, hard work, and discipline. At Cache Valley Bank, we have the resources, expertise, and flexibility to help you scale your way to success. Give us a call. Let's work together and climb the mountains that await. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
Rely now on a York Affinity Premium Comfort System to keep your home cool and comfortable. The new Affinity systems are smarter and more connected and more efficient than ever before, and you can cut your energy costs by as much as 50%. Call Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning, your local York dealer, to schedule a free system evaluation. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning showroom is west of DI and online at advancedheating-ac.com.
We're not comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air.
Spring will get here, and when it does, those old rusted-out vehicles need to be moved. Call DD Auto and Salvage and let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it easy and fast to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. Pickup is available. DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204.
That's 787-1204 today.
See store for details.
This is The Herd.
Attention listeners.
With Colin Cowherd.
Kim Mulkey is the coach of LSU. People think she's obnoxious, and I would admit she does dress like a disco ball. But my entire life, fans support male coaches who are schmucks, who bully. Well, her players love Kim Mulkey when she gets in the book deal.
This is The Herd.
Weekdays from 10 to 1 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan. Northern Utah and Southern Idaho's home for sports. It's the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Welcome back, Full Court Press. Hour 1 will in progress on a shortened show. We'll be going to 5:27 about an hour from now. 1 hour from now, we will have kicked it over to, well, it'll be a commercial break, and then pregame for the national title game for the men's NCAA tournament. That'll tip off, I think, a little after 6, but pregame is elongated because, of course, it has to be. It's the national title game. Got to have the long pregame. So you can tune in there, the home of March Madness here in the Valley. We've had as many games as really humanly possible for a radio station to host, including hearing a bit of the Aggies when they played. But you'll be able to hear that game tonight. As I said, pregame starting at 5:30, so it cuts into our show. But we're going to get to most of what's going on today. We've already been going into Utah State. Maybe having a new coach, depending on how much credence you want to put into Twitter reports from, people who normally haven't reported Utah State news. So people saying that it's a done deal. Other people who, from more reputable places, have claimed that it's not a done deal at all. So it just depends on how much you want Danny Sprinkle to come here. If you wish it hard enough, maybe he'll come. But some hard news that we did get today, confirmation from reputable sources, usually the players themselves. One of them came from a trusted transfer source, verbal commits among others. 3 Utah State players have decided to put their name into the transfer portal. Those 3 names being Sean Bairstow, Max Shulga, and Szymon Zapala. So 2 of those guys were key contributors on Utah State's team this season. He had, I think, the 4th leading scorer and the 5th leading scorer on the team. And the second guy with the second most assists in Max Shulga, and I think Sean Bairstow was 2nd or 3rd in rebounds per game. So losing some key contributors. Szymon Zapala, he's the guy who spent 3 years at Utah State, just hasn't managed to fit in, hasn't managed to make the jump. Each of the last 2 years, I kept thinking, all right, this is when Szymon's going to make the jump. This is when he's going to be able to get into the rotation. And especially this year. Now, a couple years back, Brandon Horvath came in, I thought, okay, maybe Szymon can jump into the rotation. Maybe he can jump ahead of Trevin Dores. And he just did it. And then this year, no Brandon Horvath. He did bring in Dan Ackerman. I thought, okay, this is going to be the year. Szymon's had this potential. Ever since he came out of Poland, there was some hype around him. He was a highly regarded recruit. I think he was like a 3-star recruit, one of the highest recruits the Aggies have ever had, and it just didn't work. And so it's not a loss in terms of production for Utah State. It's unfortunate that he never managed to get it to work, but it is going to be an opportunity for Szymon Zapala. I wish him the best. hopefully he's able to find good situation, good place for him to end up and have some good production. For the others, obviously, they certainly had a future at Utah State if they wanted it, but they've decided at least to test the potential of them leaving. Max Shulga went to the portal before, according to reports. He went to the portal and when Craig Smith left, decided to come back. Mind you, that was before he'd really made an impact anywhere. He wasn't a member of the rotation, and I think Ryan Odom came back, managed to convince him that, hey, look, you're going to be a bigger part of this team going forward. And he ended up being. This last year, averaged nearly 12 points a game. I think it was 11.9 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4 assists. Was one of a handful of players. I think it was like 14 or so players that tallied as many points, assists, and rebounds as he did. It was something like 400 points, 150 rebounds, 150 assists, give or take. I put it in the article I wrote about these three men transferring from Utah State. The specifics of, a bit how unique Max Shulga's season was and just how versatile he was. He was a scorer, he was a rebounder at his guard position, and he's really good at getting assists. I know sometimes he was a bit of a turnover machine, but overall he is a good passer. So it certainly hurts Utah State. And, when you look at it, Utah State, they were one of, I think, something like a dozen teams in college basketball who had 5 players average double-figure scoring. And Utah State has, if Bairstow and Shulga do leave, Utah State will have lost 4 of them. Now, I was expecting Sean Bairstow to leave. Now, initially, I just thought he was going to go back to Australia and play pro. Thought he wanted to just, go maybe start making some money playing basketball, or make like actual real money, like salary money, instead of just, Utah State NIL is not, a game changer. But it's possible that maybe he does want to go somewhere that will get him, NIL money. Like instead of just going to Australia and playing professional, he can get maybe similar money going somewhere and playing basketball at a different school. That might be the case. I don't know for sure. But that's going based off the assumption that he was going back to Australia to play pro to begin with, and that was his motivation. I don't know. That's just what I guessed. I assume that's what he wanted to do. But Sean Bairstow is going to have the 1 year of eligibility to go wherever he wants. A rumor is New Mexico. He has some connections there. His older brother played at New Mexico, was a really good player there. New Mexico shells out a lot of NIL money, reportedly at least, or at least rumors, that they shell out a lot of NIL money for players. Maybe they give that to Bairstow. Who knows? But, I was expecting Bairstow to be gone. And so at the jump, I thought, okay, they're going to lose Bairstow, Taylor Funk, and Dan Akin. 2 of those because, Funk and Akin don't have any more eligibility. And I assume Sean Bairstow was going to be gone. Just wanted to move on. And so when that was the case, you thought, okay, the only thing Utah State would really have to do at that point is find yourself, it's hard to replace 3 guys who average double figures, but it was doable. And if you lose Trevin Dorius as well, you're losing a starting small forward, power forward, and center, and your backup center. So basically your entire center rotation and your 2 forwards, basically your whole front court. But they had some talented freshmen coming in, have some good players that could play reserve roles. You don't want to have them starting. You would have had guys like Carson Temple and Dallin Grant. They're both coming, you think. And then you also had Khalifa Sacco. Now, mind you, I don't know if any of those guys are coming now because of the coaching change, but when Odom was still there, you thought, okay, you're bringing in some guys. One of them's a pretty talented JUCO center. So you think, okay, all you need to bring in is a forward who can ideally play both forward spots, small forward and power forward. Fill the void left by Taylor Funk. You're already kind of filling the void left by Dan Akin and Trevin Dorius by bringing in a JUCO kid who, by all accounts, could at least mostly replace that production at the center position. And then maybe you bring in a center or maybe another scorer. Basically, with 2 solid transfers, they could have replaced the loss of Funk and Akin and Bairstow. They could have done it. It wouldn't have been a perfect solution, but with incoming talented freshmen, some other guys maybe stepping up into bigger roles, Utah State was only a couple of good transfers away from being able to replace everything they'd lost. Well, now suddenly lose Max Shulga, too. And theoretically, Utah State can and then you just get another transfer. But the more transfers you have to add, the less likely it becomes that you're going to, fill all those spots, well enough. Like, are the guys you're bringing in going to be good enough? Already I was making the assumption that the JUCO center coming in, Sacco, I was assuming he was going to be competent in that spot. You assume that guys like Carson Templin and Dallin Grant are to come in and be suitable reserve power forwards. They were assumptions you could make. They aren't unfounded assumptions, but they're still assumptions, and there's always a chance they're going to be wrong. And now there's just more and more and more questions, more assumptions you have to make. Somebody has to step up. You have to land a good transfer, and that transfer has to fit. And we just talked about Szymon Zapala. He came in with all the recruiting accolades, more stars, more 24/7, 247 Sports, rankings and ratings and all that. Was one of the best recruits ever, and he just didn't fit. By every account, he should have developed into something, but he didn't. So it's just a question of, can Utah State fill those spots? Now they have to fill even more spots. And so it just gets that much harder. Now you hope that Shulga, maybe this is just kind of his MO. Maybe it's something he's developing a bit of an MO for. When the coach leaves, he enters the transfer portal. Maybe he's just exploring his options, saying, look, I can enter the portal as many times as I want. And he explores his options. Maybe he considers following Odom to VCU. Maybe he considers going somewhere else. Maybe he considers staying at Utah State. And if he does, Utah State will be all the better for it. We'll just have to see. But the thing is, Utah State, if they'd been able to keep 2 out of the 3 of Stephen Ashworth, Max Shulga, and Sean Bairstow, if they're able to keep 2 out of those 3, then I don't think there's any loss Utah State can't take. They can survive losing Szymon Zapala and Trevin Dorius and Rylan Jones and Taylor Funk and Dan Akin and even like a Z Hamoda or an Isaac Johnson. Now, if they all leave, then that kind of gets a bit hectic, but they can survive any of those guys leaving and most of those guys leaving. But they need a core base. Stephen Ashworth functions as, he's the one guy left, who hasn't entered the transfer portal or is leaving with, no eligibility remaining. He's a nice foundation, but you just think, okay, at best, maybe Utah State could be mediocre if they have Ashworth. Because you have one good player, and what else do you have? You got to fill it in with a lot of good players. And there's a lot of good players out there, but you're not guaranteed to be able to get them to Utah State. And so that's why you got to hope that whoever the new head coach is can come in and convince Shulga. Now, I say Shulga because I think Bairstow is just most likely going to leave. I don't know if there's any way you can convince him to come back. Maybe Shulga because we know he's done this before and come back. We don't know if he's serious about leaving or if it's like last time where he just explores his options. Thing is, you got to hope the next head coach can come in and convince one of those guys to stay. And Stephen Ashworth. We don't know that Stephen Ashworth isn't going to leave. So we've just got to it's not a requirement. But you just really hope that the new head coach can come in, keep at least 2 of your top players in Logan. Give yourself a good backcourt. That's what it would end up being. Ashworth and Shulga. Try and keep them around so that you can have a foundation to build off of. Otherwise, next year is just going to be a rebuilding year. Maybe that's what it takes. But ideally, you can have a strong year one. So you'd like the Aggies to be able to do that to keep this momentum going. Anyway, we got to take another break. We're running a little long on breaks, so we're going to have to take a couple back-to-back breaks really quickly here. We'll be back after this on 106.9 The Fan.
This is Ryan at My Mattress. My wife and I were laughing the other day because she read an article about things not to buy online. The first thing was prom dresses. Dresses advertised versus dresses delivered. Needless to say, what people thought they were getting is not what they got. It's much the same with mattresses. Almost always, buying a mattress online ends in buyers being let down. At My Mattress, we try to always exceed expectations. Lower prices than online, and better beds. Only at My Mattress.
This year, celebrate your anniversary with diamond jewelry from S.A. Needham Jewelers. Adorned in diamonds, she will feel elegant and cherished. Choose from a large selection of diamond bands, diamond pendants, and diamond earrings. Also, you'll enjoy a beautiful selection of diamonds mounted in rose gold. We price our diamond jewelry with an integrity price guarantee so that you can be assured the best possible value. With 12 months interest-free financing available. For the people and occasions that matter most. S.A. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block, at the sign of the clock.
Alpine Home Medical has been around for over 25 years. Can you believe that? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent. What keeps us coming to work every day? We're passionate about caring for you. From home and bathroom safety to transportation, mobility, recovery, oxygen, sleep, and more, come into any of our 10 locations today and let us take care of you.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Visit us at alpinehomemedical.com.
And now, the Dan Patrick Show.
Dan Patrick.
Why is it gamesmanship with Caitlin Clark, but we're asking the LSU girls to have sportsmanship? Let's not get caught up in just that moment there. Angel Reese chose to celebrate that way. That's on her. And they won because of their bench. The bench outscored Iowa 30-8. That's the difference here.
The Dan Patrick Show.
Dan and the Danettes and you.
Weekday mornings from 7 to 10 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
This is Nate Lamson with Valley Office Systems, your home team when local matters. Valley Office Systems is your local provider for all things office, copiers, printers, furniture, and document management. Proudly serving Cache Valley since 2007. Visit valleyofficesystems.com.
There are those who dedicate themselves to a sense of honor, to a life of courage, and a commitment to something greater than themselves. They have always defended this nation and each other. They still do. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance, reminding you that when you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. Adopt Pure Love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Full Court Press, Jason Walker here with you. Excuse Eric for the week. Chose a bad week to leave. Is already news. Talk about the news. Utah State having 3 players at least enter the transfer portal today. I wonder if they were talking amongst each other. Maybe they got news of a new head coach. Yeah, there's a lot of smoke around Utah State potentially already knowing who their head coach is. People saying that it's a done deal. Danny Sprinkle of Montana State. We don't know for sure. There's no concrete reports, no reliable reports, just a lot of smoke. Maybe this is a sign because we had 3 players this morning, like Sean Bairstow and Max Shulga, basically the same time, saying they'd enter the transfer portal. News that Szymon Zapala had also entered the transfer portal. He didn't put anything out that I saw on Instagram or Twitter. Maybe he just also entered at the same time and just it wasn't as public. Didn't find out about it until later. But it is a loss. Utah State losing Max Shulga. Sean Bairstow was kind of assuming he was leaving, even though he could return. Just assumed that he wanted to move on, not because he didn't like it at Utah State, but just because he was ready for the next step in life. He's obviously been very grateful for his time at Utah State, and I'm sure he'll forever be grateful and remember his time here with fondness. He had a good run here at Utah State, especially this last year where he was a crucial part of the team, but sometimes you just want to move on. It's time for the next step, and that seems to be where Sean Bairstow is at. I initially thought he was just going to go back home, but it turns out he wants to spend another year here in college, just wants a new experience. That's how it is. Max Shulga, potentially looking to move to a different school, just different opportunity, maybe move up. It'd be kind of weird if he follows Ryan Odom to VCU, because he'd basically just wind up doing the same things he's already doing here, but with less certainty that he'll be able to do them. But, hey, don't fault a guy for making choices. And if he feels that he works really well in Ryan Odom's system, then, again, you may not necessarily be able to blame him for trying to make the most of his opportunities. I think Max Shulga can be perfectly successful at Utah State, but I'm not in his ear. One thing talking about last segment is that I think Utah State becomes a lot harder for them to have a really good year next year with the loss of Max Shulga, because I thought Utah State could tank, Bairstow, Funk, and Atkin all leaving, so long as they kept, basically they were able to keep Ashworth and Shulga. That was my thought. Keep those two, and you got a solid foundation to build off of. You can potentially fight toward the top of the Mountain West next season if you land a couple of good transfers, because you would need to replace the production of 3 guys who average double figures. So I figured it'd be doable. But now it's harder because you got Ashworth and who else? We don't know yet. But 9-1-5 kind of chiming in on this topic. He says, how many standout stars was there when Craig Smith took over that were in the program? The answer is 1, Sam Merrill. And even he had less of a track record than Stephen Ashworth. So that is, kind of the counter to my point that if it's just Ashworth, the Aggies might be in trouble. Because Ashworth, already took a big step forward, and he was even growing late into the year. There's very much a chance he can take an even further step this year. Not as big a jump. He's not going to add 7 points per game on top of his scoring average like he did this last year. But he can be the alpha dog on this team. And if Utah State lands 1 new star, because when Craig Smith came in, he had Sam Merrill, so that was 1 kind of standout star. He did lose Kobe McEwen, which, if you applied the same logic I'm using now, losing Kobe McEwen then, you'd be worried like I am now. But then Neemias Queta comes in. He was the right fit. Came in, Utah State was able to dominate. But kind of to counter the counterpoint, how lucky are you going to be to land someone like Neemias Queta? Because the issue isn't that Utah State can't rebuild quickly around Stephen Ashworth. That's not the point I would feel comfortable making, because I don't think that's true. The worry is how likely are the Aggies to be able to find the right transfer? It becomes less and less likely. The more production you lose, the less likely you're going to be able to find replacements for it. Because Utah State, with Sam Merrill stepping up, he went from what was he averaging his last year? He was averaging, 16 points his second year. Pretty good. Then he jumped up to 20. And then you added Neemias Queta on top of that, and that was enough to make Utah State one of the best teams in the conference. Can you find somebody? Can Stephen Ashworth step up from averaging 16 points per game to 20? Can Stephen Ashworth, which, funnily enough, there is a really weird correlation here, where Sam Merrill averaged 9 points, then 16 points, and then 20 points. Stephen Ashworth, I'm pretty sure, averaged 9 points the year before this last one. And he averaged 8.7. 8.7, then up to 16. Does he go up to 20 as well? I don't know. That'd be pretty crazy. But it is possible for Utah State to do a quick rebuild, but they have to get kind of lucky. Are you going to find a Nemish Keta? Utah State has found decent transfers. Taylor Funk, Dan Akin, you bring in Brandon Horvath. They found decent, but Nemish Keta was like an all-Mountain West player his first year. That's what it would take to make up for losing Shulga and Bairstow and Akin. So it's possible, but less and less likely the more and more of these guys that Utah State loses. So hopefully this is the last. But anyway, we got to take another quick break, and then we'll close out the first hour after this.
This is Jay at Daryl's Appliance. When your appliance needs service, who should you trust? May I suggest a company with 50 years of experience serving locals? A company with factory-trained technicians with over 100 years of combined experience? A company that stocks thousands of parts to service your appliance? That's Daryl's Appliance. When you need your appliance repaired right, quickly, think Daryl's West on Airport Road, open until 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
Did you know that the ideal time to have your wisdom teeth evaluated is between ages 14 to 16? While some people have room to keep them, most do not, and they can grow in at unnatural angles. This can lead to problems like headaches, jaw pain, gum disease, and infection. This is Dr. Devin Burns at Cache Valley Wisdom Teeth. Is it time to have your wisdom teeth removed? Call our office and mention this ad to receive a free panoramic x-ray and consultation. Our compassionate team at Cache Valley Wisdom Teeth will make your wisdom teeth removal comfortable and easy. Visit CacheValleyWisdomTeeth.com.
Hi, this is James Stevens with White Pine Funeral Services. At White Pine, we value compassion, integrity, and service. We are committed to serving you and treating your family as our family. We will be here when you need us most, to listen, to help, and to provide exactly what your circumstances require. At White Pine, we promise to dedicate our time and attention to you and your family. We invite you to come by and meet us. We're confident you'll feel a difference.
The new Prodigy Brewing on Center Street in Logan offers an atmosphere that's vibrant, energetic, and friendly. Serving handmade juicy burgers, wood-fired pizzas, wings, nachos, and locally crafted beer while bringing a unique space to downtown Logan. Now offering lighter lunch options like personal-sized pizzas and sliders, or choose from your favorites like wings, beer cheese, fried pickles, and more. Stop by for a quick and delicious lunch that will get you back to work on time. Experience Prodigy Brewing, exceptional food, extraordinary service, and family-friendly on Center Street in downtown Logan.
Power outages can affect our lives, from minor inconveniences to health and safety concerns. Golden Spike Electric and Generac generators are here to help. Get a free 10-year extended warranty when your Generac is installed by Golden Spike Electric. That's right, Golden Spike Electric and Generac generators offers a free 10-year extended warranty with all orders placed by April 16th. That's a savings of over $1,000. Call today to schedule your free in-home assessment online at gsegenerators.com. Golden Spike Electric and Generac automatic standby generators. Power you can count on.
Talking the sports you care about. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Back, final couple of minutes of the first hour of the Full Court Press. Jason Walker with you here. Been talking all Utah State basketball this full hour. We'll get into some Utah Jazz this next hour, probably more specifically some San Diego State. We'll probably do a bit of both. Now, the Jazz working down to the close of their season, likely to be eliminated from the playoffs in the next couple of days, probably the next 2 or 3 days, depending on how the math works out. And then, of course, San Diego State playing in the national championship game today out of the Mountain West. And that will shorten our show by a little bit. But I want to get to this text before we close out the first hour. 8577. He asks, have you heard of any rumors that Ashworth is leaving? We got the news today, Sean Bairstow, Max Shulga, Szymon Zapala all leaving. I think the fact that Stephen Ashworth wasn't among those is encouraging, but I've talked to people who are confident that Ashworth is leaving. I've talked to people who are confident he's staying. So there's conflicting rumors and opinions on that. It's hard to say for sure, but I think the fact that he wasn't in this first wave is encouraging. But you're going to be on watch for, when the next head coach is hired. Watch out for maybe Ashworth or maybe even others saying that they're entering the transfer portal. It's hard to know for sure. And you never really feel like you know until halfway through the summer. But we'll keep an eye out for other transfers, but we'll keep talking after this break. We'll keep talking Utah State basketball and more after this.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. Over the years, college basketball has been largely dominated by blue bloods: Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, and UCLA. The four schools have combined for 30 national titles, but over the last quarter century, Connecticut is starting to enter the elite conversation. The Huskies won 3 titles with Hall of Fame coach Jim Calhoun. Also, UConn transitioned to Kevin Ollie. He didn't last long at UConn, but the former player managed to lead them to a title in 2014. Haven't heard much from the program since, but after the addition of coach Dan Hurley, Connecticut is back in the national title game. The Huskies have cruised through the tournament, and tonight they face San Diego State for the title. With the amount of parity displayed throughout this year's tournament, predicting tonight's outcome will still be difficult, even though Connecticut's a big favorite. If Hurley and the Huskies can outlast a talented Aztecs team, there is no denying there's an elite program once again in Storrs, Connecticut. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. I just learned Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right. Everything you've earned, doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite restaurant, or cash back from that trip where you sort of learned to snowboard. That's also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. No, Discover does it automatically. Seriously, though, see the terms and check it out for yourself. Discover.com/match. You know our partners, TireRack.com, fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, Tire Decision Guide. They test the tires. They've got their own test track where they push tires to the limit. Yeah, those guys. You want a quiet tire with great traction, comfortable ride. Use their results to make an informed choice. They sell only the best, like the full lineup of Goodyear tires. Go to TireRack.com/Dan. See for yourself. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
When you buy Napa Auto Parts, you're getting the best. Pull into any one of the 5 locally owned Preston to Providence Napa Auto Parts stores. They'll not only make sure you get the right battery or wiper blades, but they'll even help you install it. And if you need other work done, they can recommend a dozen Napa Auto Care Centers with ASE certified technicians. That's Napa know-how.
When it comes to home care, it's important to know you have a choice. If you or a loved one is in need of hospice or home health services, remember that Primrose Home Care and Hospice believes in treating the patient as well as the problem. We work directly with you and your doctor to create a health plan that's catered to your needs. Our team is devoted to providing options in the freedom and safety of your own home. Visit us at primrosecare.com or call to schedule a free consultation. Primrose Home Care and Hospice, your local hospice and home health provider since 2006.
The home for Jazz basketball.
The Jazz have struck!
Sports Talk Radio, KLGN Logan, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
And here's what you need to know.
College basketball's national championship is tonight in Houston with 4-seed UConn against 5-seed San Diego State to end the men's tournament. Connecticut is in its 6th Final Four, all in the last 25 years, and UConn's program is 10-1 all-time in Final Four games. No NBA games tonight, 13 games tomorrow. The regular season ends Sunday afternoon. The players of the week in the league are the Lakers' Anthony Davis in the West and Mikal Bridges of the Nets in the East. Golden State's Andrew Wiggins, according to reports, is nearing a return to the team. He's been out since mid-February due to a family matter. 3 NHL games tonight. Angels have a late-night game at Seattle, but Angels third baseman Anthony Rendon was suspended 5 games for an altercation with a fan in Oakland. Milwaukee beat the Mets 10-0 today, and the Giants hit 7 home runs in a 12-3 decision over the White Sox. I'm Steve DeSager.
It's the Full Court Press with Eric Franson and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, hands up. Yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
All right, second hour, Full Court Press, shortened for Full Court Press. We only got one half of the hosts, Eric Franson, not in today, won't be in all week. And we're going to be missing half of the second hour today. I believe this will be the only show shortened by other programming. We're going to be having the National Championship game broadcast here on 106.9 The Fan. San Diego State against UConn. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But in the first hour, we're talking all about Utah State. Lots of smoke around potentially hiring Danny Sprinkle. Some think it's a done deal. Others saying it's not. We won't know for certain for the next couple of days. I expect Utah State to hire a coach by the end of the week. If Utah State has not hired a coach by the end of the week, you will have right to be worried. Because Utah State, some would argue, should have already hired a coach by now. If Ryan Odom really was searching around as much as he was and as desperate to leave as he was, Utah State really should have known by now and really should have tried to find somebody by now. But it seems Jerry Bovee probably wanted to go to where all the coaches are, the Final Four, and talk to some coaches and network and figure out who was really interested, maybe get some interviews, that kind of thing. So now that he's back, there are far fewer excuses to have a head coach, to not have a head coach. So Friday comes and goes, and there's not a concrete announcement and or an introductory press conference. Come Friday, what would Friday be? The 7th? There's not a new Utah State men's basketball head coach by the 7th? Then yeah. It'd be time to be worried. Because there are recruits out there, high school recruits. There's 4 Utah State high school, or there's 4 recruits. One of them is JUCO, 3 of them are prep recruits. Coming into Utah State, you got to secure whether or not they're actually coming. And with the transfers, assuming that Trevin Dorius and Ryland Jones don't stay, there will be 3 spots that need to be filled, likely with transfer recruits. And while there are still players entering their names into the transfer portal, we just saw 3 Utah State players enter their names in today, there are a lot of players who are already committing. Roddy Anderson, a name that a lot of Aggie fans had their eyes on, he's already committed to Boise State. And heck, if Stephen Ashworth leaves, that'll hurt. That'll hurt a lot. We don't know if Stephen Ashworth's going to leave. He's not in this first wave of Utah State players entering their name into the portal. I should mention that there's another name that you will see on transfer portal trackers. We have our own on CashValleyDaily.com. You can find it. It's pinned on my own Twitter profile at jwalker_sports, but you can also obviously find it on CashValleyDaily.com. One name is Cade Potter. Some of you will know the name, some of you won't. He was a redshirt the year before this last year, so the 2021-22 season. He redshirted that year, and he was on the team for the offseason and some of the preseason, but he left the team during the preseason. So before they had an open practice, something like a week or so before the season or somewhere around there, maybe 2 weeks before the season. And Potter wasn't there. I noted his absence, didn't know why he wasn't there. Later heard that he'd left the team. And he wasn't on the roster anymore. So he's listed as a transfer from Utah State, and nominally he is. He hasn't officially entered the transfer portal until the initial deadline, or whatever the opposite of deadline is. When the portal opened, he was allowed to enter, but he hadn't been on the team since the offseason. So I've kind of forgotten about him. So in a sense, there are 4 players transferring from Utah State. You include him. But he wasn't on this last year's roster. So not as easy to include him as one of the 2022-23 players that is transferring, because he's not. He was off the team. He's just transferring because now he's got to go somewhere else. So we'll see how all that goes. But one thing I wanted to move to was the Utah Jazz. They're on the verge, as I said, kind of at the beginning of the show. They're on the verge, and I think at the beginning of the second hour here, they're on the verge of being eliminated from the playoffs, which is, it kind of gives you mixed feelings. And this has been a really weird season for me, because looking at the Jazz, this is a team that at first was wanting them to tank. Then I was wanting them to push forward. Now I'm kind of falling back on wanting to tank. I've flip-flopped so many times between what you kind of want this team to do. And clearly the team focused on, we want to tank, because that's what they did at the trade deadline. That's what they've been doing lately. And their reward is they're likely going to miss the playoffs. 538 has the Jazz as a 0.6%. So like 0.5% to make the playoffs. Now the next game is against the Lakers, and I believe it's tomorrow that they play the Lakers, who are themselves, the Lakers I think have pretty much gotten themselves into the playoffs, but they're fighting to maybe get out of the play-in, or at least stay in the 7 versus 8 end of the play-in. So the Lakers certainly motivated to play well, and have played decently well of late. Not superb, but not bad. Then the Jazz will also play on Thursday the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that's the game that could very likely end Utah's season. Because Utah right now, OKC has a 2-1 advantage in the season series. They're also, Oklahoma City is at number 10. That's the cutoff for the play-in. Utah is at 12. Dallas is at 11. And so the Jazz, there's 4 games left, and they're a game and a half out of the play-in, that 10th spot. So if Utah loses to the Lakers, and if Oklahoma City wins their next game, that'll already put quite the borderline insurmountable distance between the Jazz and the Thunder. To not even say anything about the potentially jumping Dallas, where I think half a game or tied with the Jazz, half a game ahead or tied with the Jazz. But if the Jazz lose, and OKC ends up going like 2 games or 2.5 games ahead, and then if Utah loses to Oklahoma City on Thursday, so if they lose these next 2 games, that's it. Utah's postseason fate could be decided on Thursday. Now, if the Jazz win the next 2 games, things get really complicated. And they would probably have to clinch a play-in appearance, likely on the last game of the regular season. And it would require help. It would require help from OKC. It would require help from Dallas, although the Jazz could obviously help their case by beating Oklahoma City on Thursday. But right now it's looking like the Jazz are going to miss the playoffs because not only do they have to basically have a 4-game win streak, they either have to go 3-1 or 4-0. I don't think anything less than 3-1 or 4-0 in their last 4 games gets them into the playoffs. But the thing is, they have to do that without Walker Kessler because he's gone into concussion protocol and is likely done for the year. Lauri Markkanen's been in and out of the lineup, and they're probably going to hold him out for at least 2 of the games, possibly 4. And it's hard to know what for because they just keep making up different injuries. Jordan Clarkson's not going to play. Colin Sexton's not going to play. You think Kelly Olynyk might miss a game or 2. The Jazz are just going to roll with the back end of their bench. They're going to play like Damian Jones, Udoka Azubuike, a bunch of these other guys. And they're probably going to end up going 2-2, maybe 1-3. I don't know if 0-4 will happen, but it could. That's what the Jazz seem to be trying to get to. 5654 2947 did text in. We're going to get to that in the next segment. I will get to your question because it seems like we're talking about San Diego State UConn. But I'm going to get into that in the next segment when we close out the show. But 5654 is asking, what's the best draft pick the Jazz can get this year? And I'm not sure if I can do the math superbly well in my head on the fly, but I think the best they can do. Now, mind you, I think this is if they go 0-4 and everyone else kind of, I guess, ahead of them, so you might say, in the lottery odds, like wins out. Because they're 2 games behind, so to speak, of Orlando and Washington, who are both 34 and 44. Jazz are 36 and 42. So Utah lost all of its games, and Washington and Orlando won 3 out of their last 4. The Jazz could end up at 7. That's, like, realistically, the highest I think the Jazz could get. Because I just don't see them. They mathematically can reach 5. But I would say 7, 8, 9 is the range. More likely 8 or 9. Outside shot at 7. Outside but realistic shot at 7. So I'd expect them to see, and I guess there's also a chance they end up at 10. So the case where you're getting like 99% of possible scenarios, that range is going to be 7 to 10. The most realistic range is about where the Jazz are right now. 8 or 9, maybe 10. So kind of middle-ish lottery. And there's some good prospects there. That's why the Jazz are trying to preserve their draft position. They don't want to end up at 10 or 11. They'd like to see if they can get to 7. So again, there's some pretty good picks around 7, 8, 9. And the higher you get, obviously the higher chance you have of jumping into the top 3. For instance, so so I'm on. So the reference I was using for doing the math on the where the Jazz could end up, it's Tankathon. I'll tell you that. I'll just tell you the site. And they have a button to sim the lottery. And I was saying, all right, I'm just going to sim the lottery just because. Well, first try, I hit the sim lottery button. Jazz get the number 1 pick. So there we go. That should be it. That'd be nice. I mean, at 9, there's not the worst odds in the world. This actually isn't the first time I've gone onto the site and first time I hit the button, Jazz end up in the top 3. The higher they get, the higher chance they have to jump into the top 3. Because it's not just about getting the top pick, because those odds are relatively low. There's decent odds they end up at 1, 2, or 3. And I think maybe even top 5. I think there may be a chance to jump into any of the top 5 slots, I think. Lottery odds keep changing. 9310 says the Jazz could get the number 1 pick, though, right? They don't go in order. It is a lottery. That said, it is a lottery, and I just literally did a simulation of the lottery live on air, and the Jazz ended up with the number 1 pick. So maybe I should spin the ping pong ball wheel, because apparently I have good luck. That's not the first time the Jazz have won the number 1 pick when I've been simulating lotteries. But anyway, we've got to take a break here. Again, we've got a shortened show. We're going to be handing it over to the men's national title game broadcast at about 5:30. We're going to close out the show talking about San Diego State UConn. We've got a couple of texts that have come in about this game. So we'll talk a little bit about it, how it might affect the Mountain West, and we'll go from there. So we'll have that next.
It's that first kiss, that moment in time.
Engagement season is in full swing, and Jarek's Fine Jewelry has been helping hundreds of couples find the perfect ring. If you are getting engaged, you have to come browse our collections. Sometimes you may find the perfect ring in just a minute, or we can help you custom create your own design. Oh, and with Mother's Day almost here, talk to us about designing the perfect mother's ring.
Jarek's Fine Jewelry. Make it special, make it Jarek's.
Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat is locally owned and operated inside the beautiful new Three Peaks Medical Plaza in North Logan. Expect the most cutting-edge techniques, qualified doctors, and friendly staff to ensure the highest quality patient care. The ENT providers have extensive training to properly treat ear, nose, and throat conditions for adults and children. Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat serves all of northern Utah and southern Idaho, accepting most insurance products including SelectMed. Go to CacheValleyENT.com for appointments and details. Cache Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat, located in North Logan and Providence.
Nothing compares to the warmth and feel that a wood stove provides. The two-time Best of Northern Utah winning team says there's never been a better time to replace your old inefficient wood stove and install a new energy-efficient EPA-certified Vermont casting wood product in your home. The U.S. government is offering federal tax credits of 26% on your wood stove install. For Vermont casting units, that includes stoves, venting, and labor. Call or email Advanced Fireplace and Stove for a free in-home estimate. Call 435-752-7272 or go to advancedfireplaceandstove.com.
The Doug Gottlieb Show.
Is there a doctor here?
Listen.
There is no more accomplished woman playing career to coaching career than Dawn Staley. This is what she said after they lost.
We're not thugs. We're not monkeys. Watch what you say.
Everybody is not racist. There is no racial background in people's discussion over her team. Shame on you.
The Doug Gottlieb Show.
Weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Cynthia and Ed.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, out of the blue, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn or just stay at the stop sign. She wasn't even really sure where she was at. She was very concerned. It was very unsettling for her.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it, to bring the family in on it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you and we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
It doesn't matter who you root for. The Full Court Press has all the high school sports covered. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Welcome back, Full Court Press. Jason Walker with you here. We'll be handing it over to the National Championship Game broadcast. About 5:27, we'll go to commercial, and then we'll end up with the NCAA tournament broadcast. The National Championship for the men's tournament. Women's tournament was decided yesterday. LSU winning over Iowa, and the kind of superstar of women's basketball at the moment, Caitlin Clark. Some controversy over that, which those of you listening to the station all day, I'm sure you heard plenty about that. some controversy over trash talking, and I don't know, trash talking always tends to rub me the wrong way no matter who's doing it. But it's part of the game, and so I tend to keep quiet about it because that's just my dang opinion. And it's not really, I'm not going to change anything. But the men's tournament tonight, obviously a huge event. I mean, granted, the women's tournament brought in about, I think, peak like 12, almost 13 million viewers. So certainly growing and certainly becoming interesting. And I watched some of it. You know, I wasn't ignoring it. I was paying attention to it. So because I was interested as well. But obviously, San Diego State taking on UConn. Huge game. Huge for, San Diego State. UConn is already like, I think you heard Dan Patrick talk about it at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. How UConn's kind of on the verge of becoming a blue blood because of their recent success. I don't know if blue blood might require a bit more historical, success in the way that the Kentuckys, Dukes, and Kansases all have, and that UConn doesn't have that, way back success to the same degree, but they have a lot of recent-ish success the last 20 or so years. So they're becoming a blue blood of the 2000s. Have several national championships, under multiple head coaches. This could certainly cement them as another really great program. But San Diego State, they're looking for their first ever national championship and the first ever that a team in the Mountain West would win. And that would be a big deal. It's not going to earn necessarily any more money, but it gives the Mountain West prestige. It's something that's helped Utah State land bigger and better recruits and bigger and better head coaches because they're in a better conference. You can say, hey, you can play the reigning national champ. A team that's won a national championships is in your conference. A conference that gets numerous teams into the tournament over and over again. So San Diego State wins the championship. Already there's a level of prestige that they've earned for the conference. Just depends on whether or not you think San Diego State fans would be bearable to listen to. A couple texts we've had come in. I put them off a little bit and read some other texts before, but I wanted to get to them. I didn't ignore them. 2947, he said, help me out. The Aztecs have great defense and good depth. However, I just can't understand how they're in the national championship game. How? I watched our Aggies essentially barely lose by one basket twice to them. Those games really could have gone either way. I love my Aggies, but they certainly aren't a national championship team. This is truly madness. And that last sentence, you really have nailed it, because here's the thing. How on earth did FAU get to the Final Four? How did Miami and UConn get to the Final Four over Alabama, over Houston, over all these great teams? How did Purdue lose to Farley Dickinson? There's never really an easy answer for this because, you look at these teams and think, oh, Utah State, we barely lost to San Diego State twice. Or, two of the three losses were pretty close. And you think these other teams like, oh, Utah State, they could beat FAU. Maybe they could go toe-to-toe with some of these other teams. And the thing is, when you're basically, sometimes you're flipping a coin 4 or 5 times with these guys. San Diego State's good enough to beat every single one of the teams they faced. And they just happen to do so. Is there an explanation for it? I suppose that somewhere in this cosmic universe there is an explanation for it. But it's not one that I think we can really articulate. Certainly people write articles about, how good this is and how good that is. San Diego State's defense, and they write features and they say, this is why San Diego State's in the championship game. But there are a dozen other teams like San Diego State. Or at least, a good handful. But they didn't win. San Diego State did. Why San Diego State is different from these other teams that also place an emphasis on defense and also have guys that have an underdog spirit and also have this and have every, attribute that people are, praising San Diego State for. There are teams that have all that, but they didn't win. There's not really a way to articulate that. San Diego State just managed to do it. And there's not really the greatest explanation for that. 6865 says Drake bet $1 million on UConn, so San Diego State will win. Suppose you ever have these giant bets, it's always can always make headlines. 9315 says the kinetic basketball thing gives me hope because they were kind of like Utah State. perhaps we think we had this conversation Thursday or Friday where, or maybe I think a lot of last week when we were just talking about Utah State trying to keep their head coach. There's a world in which maybe Utah State can find a head coach and keep them for a while. Gonzaga builds themselves into a kind of an independent major conference program. No, I say independent because they're kind of independent of the West Coast Conference. West Coast Conference is not a power conference. But Gonzaga is basically a power conference team. Maybe Utah State could become that. San Diego State's basically becoming that. That's what they're doing. Now, they may end up joining the Pac-12. They join a power conference. But if San Diego State did move, they'd basically start moving into the level of becoming a mid-major powerhouse and almost a major conference team in a sense. They'd have that status of major conference. They're on the council, but they don't have the... I can't make that reference. But maybe Utah State could become that. And they'd certainly have to work harder for that because if San Diego State leaves, then they'd lose some of the prestige that I was talking about earlier. So hopefully Utah State can find the guy, build the program. Maybe they become like a San Diego State, like a UConn. That's the ideal. That's the dream. But for now, got to find a head coach. But that'll do it for us here. We're going to hand it over to the national championship broadcast. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.